The stars had always called to humanity. For thousands of years, people looked up at the night sky and wondered what secrets waited among those distant lights. By the year 2347, humanity had finally answered that call. Colonies spread across the solar system like seeds scattered by the wind. Mars had 3 million residents. The moons of Jupiter housed research stations and mining operations. Humanity was growing, reaching outward. Hungry for more? Captain Daniel Harris stood on the bridge of the colony ship Starward Hope, watching Earth shrink behind them. He was a tall man with gray at his temples and lines around his eyes that spoke of years spent staring into the void. His crew numbered 300 souls, brave men and women who had volunteered to be among the first humans to settle a world beyond their own star system. Their destination was Kepler 44, to be a garden world discovered by long-range telescopes. The planet had oceans and forests and an atmosphere humans could breathe. It would become humanity's first true step into the galaxy. Daniel turned to his first officer, a young woman named Grace Patterson. She had been with him for 5 years, and he trusted her completely. "How long until we clear the heliosphere?" he asked. Grace checked her console. 12 hours, Captain. After that, we engage the interstellar drive and begin the long journey. Daniel nodded and allowed himself a small smile. He had dreamed of this moment since childhood. Humanity was finally leaving home. They never made it. The ships appeared without warning. One moment, the sensors showed empty space. The next, they screamed with contacts. Dozens of vessels, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built, materialized around the Starward Hope like wolves surrounding a lamb. Daniel felt his blood turn cold. The alien ships were beautiful in a terrible way. Their hulls black as obsidian and curved like the shells of deep-sea creatures. They moved with a grace that made human vessels look clumsy by comparison. "Shields up," Daniel ordered, though he knew it was pointless. "Send a distress signal to Earth. All frequencies." The response came not through their communications system, but directly into their minds. A voice that was not a voice, cold and ancient and utterly without mercy. "You have violated the boundaries of your territory. You will be contained." A beam of light struck the Starward Hope, not to destroy it, but to cripple it. The engines died. The lights flickered. 300 people found themselves trapped in a metal coffin drifting through space, completely helpless. On Earth, the news arrived like a thunderbolt. Secretary General Maria Santos received the transmission in her office at the United Nations headquarters. She was 62 years old, a former diplomat who had spent her life trying to unite humanity's quarreling nations. Nothing in her experience had prepared her for this. The alien ambassador appeared in the General Assembly Hall 3 days later. The holographic image showed a creature that stood 8 feet tall, with a body that combined elements of insect and serpent. Its compound eyes reflected no emotion, and its mandibles clicked with each word. "I am Sovereign Kethril of the Vorthok Dominion," the creature announced. "Your species has existed on the edge of our territory for some time. We have observed you. We have studied you. We have decided that you are not worthy of joining the greater galactic community." The assembly sat in stunned silence. Ambassadors from every nation on Earth stared at this being from another world. This representative of a civilization that made humanity look like infants playing in a sandbox. "Your vessel has been disabled and will be returned to your system," Kethril continued. "Your people aboard it will not be harmed. We are not cruel. But you must understand your place. You are young. You are weak. You are confined to your star system until we decide otherwise. Any attempt to leave will result in the destruction of the offending vessel. Any resistance will result in the sterilization of your planet." Maria Santos found her voice. "On what authority do you impose these restrictions? We have done nothing to threaten you." Kethril's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "Authority. We have ruled the Orion Arm for 12,000 years. We have conquered species that were building starships when your ancestors were painting on cave walls. Our authority comes from our power. That is the way of the galaxy. The strong rule. The weak obey. This is not negotiable." Hologram faded, leaving humanity alone with the weight of their new reality in the days that followed. The starward hope was returned to the solar system as promised. The crew was alive but shaken, their dreams of colonization shattered. Daniel Harris retired from active service, unable to bear the thought of commanding a ship that could never leave home. The Vorthok established a patrol fleet at the edge of the solar system. 12 warships, each one capable of destroying entire cities, watched humanity like guards at a prison. Any probe that drifted too far was vaporized. Any ship that approached the boundary was warned back. Earth fell into despair. Some people demanded resistance, but what could humanity do against a civilization that had ruled the stars for millennia? Others called for acceptance, arguing that submission was better than extinction. The debates raged in every government, every household, every human heart. In Houston, a young engineer named Lucy Monroe watched the alien ships through a telescope. She was 28 years old, brilliant and stubborn and burning with a rage she could barely contain. She had spent her entire career developing propulsion systems, dreaming of the day when her engines would carry humanity to distant stars. Now those dreams seemed foolish, childish. The galaxy had rules, and humanity was not welcome. Her colleague, a man named Peter Walsh, found her on the observation deck one night. He could see the telescope pointed at the distant patrol fleet. "What are you doing?" he asked. Lucy did not look away from the eyepiece. "Studying them, their ships, their weapons, their patrol patterns, everything." "Hey, what's the point?" Lucy finally turned to face him. Her eyes were hard, determined, filled with a fire that Peter had never seen before. "Because they made a mistake," she said. "They think we're beaten. They think we'll just accept our cage and live out our existence like good little prisoners. But they don't understand humans. They don't understand what we do when someone tells us we can't do something." Peter shook his head. "They have technology thousands of years more advanced than ours. They have fleets that could wipe us out in hours. What can we possibly do?" Lucy smiled, and there was nothing warm in it. "We learn. We adapt. We get angry. And when the time comes, we show them exactly what humans are capable of when we have nothing left to lose." She turned back to her telescope, and Peter felt a chill run down his spine. Not from fear, but from hope. A small, dangerous hope that maybe, just maybe, this was not the end of humanity's story. It was only the beginning. 20 years passed, and humanity appeared to break. The United Earth Coalition formed within months of the Vorthok ultimatum. Every nation, every faction, every competing interest set aside their differences and united under a single government. The aliens saw this and noted it in their reports. The humans were organizing themselves for efficient management of their confinement, good, expected, proper behavior for a subjugated species. The Vorthok observers watched Earth's industries shift away from spacecraft production. They monitored the dismantling of interstellar research programs. They recorded the speeches of human leaders who spoke of acceptance and peaceful coexistence within their designated boundaries. They believed what they saw. After all, every other species they had conquered had followed the same pattern: resistance, despair, acceptance. Humanity was simply moving through the stages faster than most. Perhaps their short lifespans made them more practical. They could not have been more wrong. Deep beneath the Swiss Alps, in a facility that officially did not exist, Dr. Patricia Morgan stared at a holographic display of Vorthok technology. She was 53 years old, a quantum physicist who had abandoned academic glory for this secret work. Around her, a team of the brightest minds on Earth puzzled over alien secrets. "The energy frequency is the key," Patricia murmured, manipulating the display. "Their shields operate on a specific resonance. If we can match that resonance and invert it, their defenses become useless." Her assistant, a young man named Kevin Liu, looked up from his console. "That would require power levels we can't generate." "Then we find a way to generate them," Patricia replied. "That's what we do. We find ways." 5 years into the occupation, Patricia's team cracked the secret of Vorthok shielding. 3 years after that, they developed weapons that could pierce it. The work was slow, painstaking, and utterly secret. Every scientist involved understood that a single leak would mean the end of everything in the asteroid belt. Something remarkable was happening. Mining colonies that appeared to extract resources for Earth's domestic needs were actually hollowing out massive rocks. Inside these asteroids, hidden from alien sensors, shipyards worked around the clock. Thousands of workers lived in these secret facilities, never communicating with Earth through channels the Vorthok might intercept. Commander Nathan Price oversaw the construction efforts. He was a former naval officer, gray-haired and steady, who had volunteered for this assignment knowing he might never see Earth again. The isolation was crushing. Gee, but the purpose sustained him. How many ships do we have now? He asked his production chief one morning. 212 complete. Another 40 in various stages of construction. All equipped with the new weapons and shields. Nathan nodded slowly. 200 ships? Not enough to match the Dominion's fleets, but enough to start. Enough to send a message. Lucy Monroe had become the chief engineer of the Prometheus Initiative, humanity's most ambitious secret project. Her team worked on something the Vorthok had declared impossible 10,000 years ago, a drive that could fold space itself, allowing instant travel across vast distances. The physics should not have worked. Every Vorthok scientist in history had proven it could not be done, but Lucy and her team refused to accept their conclusions. They tried different approaches, tested wild theories, failed 1,000 times, and kept going. On the 15th anniversary of the occupation, Lucy's team achieved the impossible. A small drone vanished from their laboratory and appeared simultaneously at a testing station near Neptune. Space had folded. Distance had become meaningless. Lucy wept when she saw the confirmation. Not from joy, though joy was there. She wept from relief. They could reach the enemy now. They could strike anywhere. The cage was broken, even if the Vorthok did not know it yet. Admiral Christopher Blake coordinated all of these efforts. He was 60 years old, a career military man who had lost his son aboard the Starward Hope during the first contact. That loss burned in him like a star that would never go out. He had sworn on his son's memory that humanity would not remain in chains. Every month, he received reports through encrypted channels that changed hands a dozen times before reaching him. Ship counts, weapon tests, training progress. The military of the United Earth Coalition was small and visible, a token force that satisfied Vorthok observers. The real military was hidden, growing in darkness, waiting. Secretary General Santos, now in her 80s, but still sharp as a blade, worked alongside Blake. She had maintained the fiction of submission for 2 decades, smiling at Vorthok inspectors, making speeches about peace and acceptance, all while knowing the truth. The act weighed on her soul, but she bore it. For humanity, she would bear anything. The children born after the occupation know nothing else, she said to Blake one evening. They've grown up thinking we're prisoners forever. When we finally act, they'll have to understand why we waited so long. Blake nodded. They'll understand. When they see what we've built, what we've sacrificed, they'll understand. And they'll fight alongside us. The Vorthok continued their patrols. They continued their mockery. In the halls of the Dominion, humans became a punchline. The soft, weak creatures who had surrendered without a fight. Other species whispered different stories, tales of a young race that was not what it seemed. But the Dominion dismissed such talk. Training camps operated on the dark side of the moon, hidden from any observation. Soldiers drilled in combat techniques designed specifically to exploit Vorthok weaknesses. Pilots flew simulators until they could navigate in their sleep. Everyone knew the day would come. Everyone was ready. On the 20th anniversary of the occupation, Santos called a secret meeting of the Coalition's inner circle. These were the only people on Earth who knew the full scope of what humanity had accomplished. 20 years ago, we were told to accept our place, she said. We were told that we were weak, that we were primitives, that we should be grateful to be allowed to exist at all. We smiled and nodded and pretended to agree. She stood straighter, her old bones finding new strength. But we are not weak. We never were. We are humanity. We face impossible odds and find ways to win. We look at boundaries and see challenges. We take our anger and our grief and our stubborn refusal to surrender and we forge them into weapons. She turned to Admiral Blake. Are we ready? Blake's smile was cold as the void between stars. We have 300 warships hidden in the belt. We have weapons that will shatter their shields. We have a drive that lets us strike anywhere in the galaxy. We have soldiers who have trained their entire adult lives for this moment. He met her eyes with fierce certainty. We were ready 5 years ago. We were just waiting for you to say the word. Santos looked at the faces around the table. 20 years of secrecy. 20 years of sacrifice. 20 years of pretending to be broken while building something unbreakable. Then the word is given, she said. Operation Prometheus begins at midnight. In 12 hours, the galaxy would learn that humanity had never truly surrendered, and nothing would ever be the same. Commander Vethrak had served in the Vorthok patrol fleet for 6 years. It was the most boring assignment in the entire Dominion. Nothing ever happened. The humans sent the occasional probe beyond their boundaries, and his ships destroyed it. Sometimes human leaders transmitted messages asking for reconsideration of their confinement, and he ignored them. That was the extent of his duties. He spent most of his time in his private quarters, reading reports from more exciting postings and dreaming of the day he would be reassigned. His crew had grown lazy. His ships ran on minimal alert status. Why waste energy watching primitives who had given up 2 decades ago? At exactly midnight Earth Standard Time, his life became very interesting. The first warning came from his sensor officer, young Vorthok, who had never seen actual combat. Her voice cracked as she reported contacts emerging from the asteroid belt. Dozens of contacts. Then hundreds. Vethrak rushed to the bridge, his compound eyes struggling to process what the displays showed him. 200 human vessels in perfect formation, moving toward his patrol fleet with impossible speed. The ships were like nothing in Dominion records. Sleek, angular, bristling with weapons that pulsed with unfamiliar energy signatures. This cannot be, he whispered. They had nothing. No capability. This is impossible. His communications officer tried to hail the approaching fleet, demanding that they stand down and return to their territory. The response was a single transmission on all frequencies. This is Captain Samuel Griffin of the United Earth Coalition vessel Defiance. You have occupied our system and imprisoned our people for 20 years. That ends now. You have 60 seconds to surrender your ships. After that, we open fire. Vethrak laughed despite his fear. 60 seconds. His 12 ships could destroy 200 human vessels without breaking formation. The Vorthok had been fighting wars since before humans had invented fire. All ships, attack formation, he ordered. Destroy these vermin. The Vorthok patrol fleet moved with practiced precision. Their weapons powered up, shields activated, targeting systems locked onto the approaching humans. They had fought 1,000 battles against species far more advanced than these. Primitives. The battle lasted 11 minutes. Captain Samuel Griffin stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching the alien ships burn. He was 42 years old, a man who had spent 15 years training for this exact moment. He felt no joy in the destruction before him, only grim satisfaction. Target the flagship, he ordered. Disable, don't destroy. I want survivors to tell the story. The Defiance's weapons struck Vethrak's ship with surgical precision. Human engineers had spent 2 decades studying Vorthok technology, finding every weakness, designing weapons specifically to exploit them. Shields that had never failed now collapsed in seconds. Armor that had turned aside attacks from dozens of species melted like ice under plasma fire. Vethrak managed to send a distress signal before his bridge exploded around him. His last thought was disbelief. The humans had been weak. The humans had been contained. The humans had been no threat at all. He had been wrong. Of the 12 Vorthok warships that had guarded Earth's prison, 11 were destroyed. The 12th, Vethrak's flagship, drifted as a burning wreck, its surviving crew scrambling for escape pods. Human ships moved among the debris, rescuing survivors, collecting intelligence, and sending a message to the galaxy. On Earth, the news spread within hours. The secret was out. Humanity had been building in the shadows, preparing for this moment, while pretending to accept their chains. The revelation hit like a shockwave. People who had grown up believing they were prisoners forever suddenly learned the truth. They were free, and they were fighting back. Secretary General Santos addressed the planet from the coalition headquarters. Behind her, screens showed the burning wreckage of the Vorthok patrol fleet. "For 20 years, we kept a secret," she said. "We let them believe we were broken, because that belief was our greatest weapon. We built ships in hidden shipyards. We developed technology they thought impossible. We trained soldiers who never forgot what was taken from us." Her voice hardened with decades of suppressed rage. "Today, we struck the first blow. But this is not the end. The Vorthok Dominion will respond with everything they have. They will try to crush us, to burn our world, to make an example of our defiance. They will fail, because we are humanity. We do not surrender. We do not accept our place. We fight. We adapt. We win." The Vorthok High Council received news of the disaster within hours. Sovereign Kethril, ancient and terrible, could not believe what his advisors told him. A patrol fleet destroyed by humans. The creatures they had dismissed as insignificant vermin? "Show me the recordings," he demanded. He watched the battle footage in islands. Human ships moving with speed and precision that should have been impossible. Weapons tearing through Vorthok shields like they were not there. His warriors, the finest soldiers of a civilization that had ruled for 12,000 years, dying in minutes. "How?" he asked when the footage ended. "How did they develop this capability? We monitored them constantly. We saw nothing." His intelligence chief, a Vorthok named Sethanel, bowed his head in shame. "They deceived us, Sovereign. Their visible activities were a facade. The real work happened in places we could not see. Underground facilities, hollowed asteroids, hidden colonies we never detected. You are telling me that a species barely 2 centuries into their industrial age outsmarted our intelligence services?" "Yes, Sovereign. That is exactly what I'm telling you." Kethril's mandibles clicked with fury. He had lived for over 300 years. He had watched species rise and fall, had commanded fleets that conquered entire star systems. He had believed humans to be beneath contempt. Now those same humans had humiliated him before the entire Dominion. "Summon the Third Fleet," he ordered. 500 warships, the finest crews and commanders in the Dominion. We will crush these insects and reduce their world to ash. The order went out across the Dominion's communication networks. The Third Fleet began assembling, drawing ships from a dozen systems. It would take time to gather such a force, time the humans would use well in the weeks that followed. Human ships appeared throughout the Orion Arm. Lucy Monroe's space-folding drive allowed them to strike anywhere, anytime, without warning. Dominion supply depots exploded. Communication relays went dark. Patrol ships vanished without a trace. Other species watched with growing wonder. The Kethmari, enslaved for 8,000 years, heard whispers of human victories and felt something they had long forgotten: hope. The Torvelians, absorbed into the Dominion 5 centuries ago, began speaking quietly of independence. Throughout the galaxy, the oppressed raised their heads and looked toward Earth. Admiral Blake coordinated the strikes from his command center in Earth's orbit. Every mission served multiple purposes: damage to the enemy, intelligence gathering, and demonstration of human capability. He wanted the galaxy to see that humanity was not just fighting back. They were winning. Lieutenant Commander Kelly Martinez led a raid on a Dominion, listening post 300 light-years from Earth. Her team captured databases full of enemy intelligence, including patrol routes, fleet dispositions, and communication codes. "Send it all back to command," she ordered after the post was secured. "Every piece of information gives us another advantage." The Dominion scrambled to respond, but they were fighting an enemy unlike anything in their history. Human tactics were unpredictable, creative, and utterly without the rigid patterns that defined Vorthok military doctrine. Every time they adapted to one approach, humanity tried something new. Captain Griffin received word that the Third Fleet was assembling. 500 warships, the largest Dominion force deployed in 3 centuries. It should have been terrifying. Instead, he smiled. "They're scared," he told his crew. 500 ships to deal with a species they said was no threat? They're scared, and they should be, because we're just getting started. The galaxy held its breath. The Third Fleet was coming, and humanity was ready. The Third Fleet emerged from hyperspace near Arcturus Station, a massive Dominion military base that served as the gateway to human-controlled space. 500 warships in perfect formation, each one crewed by veterans who had fought across the galaxy. Their commander, High Admiral Vorental, was considered the finest military mind the Vorthok had produced in generations. He expected to find desperate humans making a last stand. He expected easy victory. What he found was a trap. Admiral Blake had anticipated the Dominion's response from the beginning. The Third Fleet would come through Arcturus, the most direct route to Earth. They would expect humanity to defend the station or flee before their overwhelming force instead. Human ships waited in the shadow of a gas giant too light, hours away, hidden by the planet's magnetic field. Over 1,000 vessels now flew under Coalition command. Built in the hidden shipyards and armed with weapons, the Dominion still did not understand. Commodore Emil Griffin commanded the main battle group. He had been promoted after the first strike, his calm leadership during the patrol fleet's destruction proving his worth. Now he waited with his crew. Watching sensor data that showed the enemy fleet advancing toward Arcturus Station, or moving in standard Dominion attack formation, reported Lieutenant Amy Chen, his tactical officer. 3 waves, heavy ships in the center, lighter vessels on the flanks. Exactly as predicted, Griffin nodded. 20,000 years of dominance. They've forgotten how to adapt because they've never needed to. That changes today. The battle began when human ships appeared behind the Third Fleet's formation. Not in front, where the Dominion expected resistance, but behind, where their defenses were weakest. The space-folding drive allowed instant repositioning, turning traditional naval tactics meaningless. Vorental tried to wheel his fleet to face the threat. But human ships vanished before his weapons could lock on, only to appear somewhere else entirely. His rigid formation began to fragment as individual captains broke ranks to pursue enemies that were never where they seemed to be. "Stay in formation," Vorental commanded. "Do not let them divide us." But his orders came too late. Human battle groups struck the separated Vorthok squadrons one at a time, overwhelming them with concentrated firepower before moving to the next target. Ships that expected to fight alongside hundreds of allies found themselves alone against dozens of enemies. Colonel Vincent Drake led the ground assault on Arcturus Station itself. His Marines had trained for 15 years in zero-gravity combat, studying Vorthok biology to understand where they were vulnerable. They knew that the aliens' compound eyes had blind spots. They knew that their exoskeletons were weakest at the joints. They knew exactly how to kill them. The station's defenders had never faced anything like human soldiers in close combat. The Vorthok were larger, stronger, and had fought countless species across the galaxy. But humans fought with a ferocity that shocked them. These small, soft creatures threw themselves into battle without hesitation, accepting wounds that would cripple other species and keeping on fighting. Drake himself led the assault on the command center. He was 51 years old, scarred from a dozen engagements, and completely without fear. His team cut through Vorthok security forces like a blade through water. The station commander, Vorthok named Krelvex, made his last stand at the entrance to the command center. He was an old warrior, veteran of wars that had ended before humans discovered electricity. He had never been defeated. "You cannot win," he told Drake as they faced each other. "Even if you take this station, even if you destroy the Third Fleet, the Dominion has hundreds more fleets. You will be crushed eventually." Drake's response was to raise his weapon. "Maybe, but we'll make you remember us. We'll make you fear us. And by the time you crush us, if you ever do, the galaxy will know that the Dominion can be beaten." He fired. Krelvex fell. An Arcturus station belonged to humanity. In space, the battle raged for 12 hours. The Third Fleet, 500 strong, faced an enemy that refused to fight by their rules. Human ships appeared and disappeared like ghosts, striking weak points and vanishing before retaliation could arrive. Admiral Blake coordinated the attack from orbit, feeding intelligence to his commanders, adjusting tactics in real dash time. High Admiral Vorntel watched his fleet die around him. He had commanded the finest warships in the Dominion, crewed by the best soldiers in the galaxy, and he was losing badly. "Retreat," he finally ordered, the word tasting like poison in his mouth. "All ships retreat to Dominion space." Of 500 warships, fewer than 30 survived to obey that command. The Third Fleet, the pride of the Vorthok military, had been annihilated. Human losses were 47 ships and just over 3,000 lives. Every death was mourned. But the victory was undeniable. Commodore Griffin stood on the bridge of the Defiance as the last enemy ships fled. Around him, his crew was silent, processing what they had accomplished. They had faced the best the Dominion had to offer and won decisively. "Send the message," Griffin ordered. "Let the galaxy know what happened here." Transmission went out on every frequency. In every language the Coalition had learned from captured databases. "This is Commodore Samuel Griffin of the United Earth Coalition. The Vorthok Third Fleet has been destroyed. Arcturus Station is now under human control. To the Dominion, you told us to accept our place. You told us we were weak. You were wrong. To everyone else, the Dominion can be beaten. They are not invincible. Rise up, fight back. The galaxy belongs to all of us." The message reached every corner of the Orion Arm, on worlds that had been enslaved for millennia. Beings of every shape and size heard it. They heard that the young species called humanity had done what no one else had accomplished in 12,000 years. They had defeated the Dominion in open battle. The Kethmari uprising began within days. After 8,000 years of slavery, they rose against their masters with weapons, improvised from mining equipment and farming tools. They died by the thousands, but they kept fighting. They had hope now. Someone had shown them it was possible. The Torvalian Republic declared independence. Throwing off 5 centuries of Dominion rule, their fleet was small, but they aligned themselves with humanity, offering intelligence and support. Other species followed. The Dominion's grip on the galaxy began to loosen. On Earth, Lucy Monroe watched the battle footage in her laboratory. Her drive system had made this victory possible. Her technology had carried human ships across the galaxy. She felt pride, but also weight. Those 47 ships had trusted her work to protect them. 3,000 people had died believing her engines would bring them home. Admiral Blake found her there late that night. He could see the burden on her shoulders, the cost of victory written in her eyes. "We won," he said. "But the Dominion won't stop. They'll come back with everything they have. We need to be ready." Blake sat down beside her. He was 63 years old, tired in ways that went beyond physical exhaustion. He had lost his son to the Vorthok 20 years ago. He had spent every moment since then preparing for revenge. Now that it was happening, he felt not satisfaction, but duty. "That's why we'll win," he said. "Because we never stop. We never accept that something is impossible. We just keep finding ways." Lucy looked at her schematics, at the plans for even more powerful drives, more devastating weapons, more advanced ships. The war was far from over. The Dominion would come with everything they had, and humanity would be ready. "Then let's get back to work," she said. The tide had turned, but the hardest battles were still to come. 3 years after the first strike, the Vorthok Dominion made their final gamble. Every remaining warship, every reserve fleet, every vessel that could carry weapons was assembled for one massive assault on Earth itself. 7,000 ships gathered at the edge of human-controlled space. The largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history, Sovereign Kethril commanded from his personal flagship, the Eternal Dominion. He had lived for over 300 years and had never known defeat until these humans had appeared. His empire was crumbling. Species that had been subjugated for millennia were rising up. Former allies were negotiating with the Coalition. Everything the Dominion had built was falling apart. This attack would end the human threat forever, or it would end the Dominion itself. Admiral. Blake watched the enemy fleet approach from the orbital fortress Unity. He was 66 years old now, worn down by 3 years of constant war. But his mind was still sharp, his resolve unbroken. Around Earth, over 5,000 human warships waited in defensive formation. Along with orbital weapons platforms and defense satellites, Captain Susan Hayes. His chief of staff reported the final readiness status. All stations confirm ready, Admiral. Ground defenses are armed. Civilian evacuation to underground shelters is complete. We've done everything we can. Blake nodded slowly. Signal the fleet. Today we fight for Earth. Today we show them that humanity will never be conquered. The battle began at dawn, Earth time. 7,000 Dominion ships advanced in a wall of death, weapons charging, shields glowing with power. They came to destroy, to burn humanity's homeworld to ashes and scatter the species that had defied them. Human ships moved to intercept. The scale of the engagement was beyond anything in recorded history. Thousands of vessels on each side, weapons firing across millions of kilometers. Ships dying in flashes of light that could be seen from Earth's surface. Commodore Griffin led the counterattack. The Defiance had survived 3 years of constant combat, her hull patched and repaired 100 times. Griffin himself bore scars from a boarding action that had nearly killed him, but he was still fighting. All ships, focus fire on their command section, he ordered. Take out their coordination, and their formation falls apart. Human battle groups punched through the Dominion lines, targeting the communication ships that kept the enemy fleet organized. Without coordination, the rigid Vorthok tactics became a weakness. Individual squadrons, unable to receive orders, fell back on training that assumed they would always have support. Lucy Monroe's newest weapon activated for the first time. She had called it the resonance cannon, a device that destabilized enemy power cores from a distance. On the bridge of her research vessel, she watched as Dominion ships began exploding from within, their engines overloading catastrophically. She whispered. It actually works. The weapon changed the battle's momentum. Vorthok ships that had been pressing forward suddenly found their sisters erupting in flames around them. Panic began to spread through the enemy fleet. These humans had technology that should not exist. Weapons that killed without warning, tactics that defied all logic. Sovereign Cathrell watched his fleet dying. He had brought everything the Dominion had left, and it was not enough. The humans were too fast, too clever, too unwilling to accept defeat. Every time he thought he had them contained, they found a new way to escape and strike back. Order the fleet forward, he commanded. All ships, concentrate on reaching Earth. If we can destroy their homeworld, we destroy their spirit. But the human defense was too strong. Orbital platforms fired weapons powerful enough to crack moons. Ground-based cannons reached into space, striking enemy vessels before they could approach the planet. Fighter squadrons, too small for the Dominion to take seriously, swarmed larger ships and tore them apart piece by piece. Griffin's battle group reached the Eternal Dominion itself. In a boarding action that would be remembered for centuries, human Marines forced their way onto the Vorthok flagship. Colonel Drake, now a general, led the assault personally. The fighting through the flagship was brutal. Vorthok warriors defended every corridor, every compartment, every inch of their sovereign's ship. But the humans kept coming. They had waited too long for this moment to be stopped now. General Drake reached the bridge with a handful of survivors. He was wounded in 3 places, bleeding through his armor, but still on his feet. Sovereign Cathrell waited for him there, surrounded by his personal guard. So, the ancient Vorthok said, this is how it ends. After 12,000 years, we fall to creatures who learned to make fire only yesterday. Drake kept his weapon raised. You made a mistake when you came to our system. You thought we would submit like the others? You never understood what humans do when someone tries to cage us. Enlighten me, Cathrell replied. Before you kill me, tell me what we failed to understand.
Ow.
Drake met those compound eyes without fear. You fight to dominate. You conquer because your history tells you to. But humans fight for something else. We fight because we refuse to be controlled. We fight because freedom matters more than survival. We took our anger and our pain and our stubborn refusal to surrender, and we built something you never saw coming. He stepped closer, his weapon steady. The Dominion ruled through fear. But fear only works until someone decides they would rather die than live on their knees. We decided that 23 years ago. And now, your empire burns. The battle ended 3 hours later. Of 7,000 Dominion warships, fewer than 500 survived to surrender. Sovereign Cathrel was taken prisoner, his ancient empire shattered beyond repair. On Earth, people emerged from shelters to see their sky free of enemies for the first time in over 2 decades. Celebrations erupted in every city, every village, every corner of the planet. They had won. Against impossible odds, against an enemy that had ruled the stars for millennia. Humanity had won. Secretary General Santos, 91 years old and frail but unbowed, addressed the newly formed Galactic Assembly 1 year later. Representatives from hundreds of species, many meeting as equals for the first time in their histories, listened as she spoke. Humanity did not seek this war, she said, her voice carrying across the vast chamber. We only wanted to explore, to learn, to grow alongside our galactic neighbors. But when we were threatened, when we were told to accept our place as lesser beings, we chose another path. We chose to fight, not for conquest, not for domination, but for the right of all species to determine their own destiny. She paused, looking out at the diverse assembly. Beings of every shape and size, freed from Dominion rule because humanity had shown them it was possible. Let this be the lesson of our struggle. No species is inferior. No people should be enslaved. The galaxy is vast enough for all of us. Humanity offers friendship to any who would accept it, and we will defend those who cannot defend themselves. In the years that followed, the United Earth Coalition became a founding member of the Galactic Federation. Humanity took its place among the stars, not as the youngest species or the weakest, but as the ones who had reminded the galaxy what courage could accomplish. Lucy, a Monroe, lived to see humanity's first colony outside the Orion Arm, a world named Hope in honor of all who had been lost. She stood on its surface at 92, watching alien suns set over mountains that no human had ever seen before. Admiral Blake, long retired, joined her there. They stood together in silence, two people who had given everything to reach this moment. "We did it," Lucy finally said. "We actually did it." Blake nodded, his old eyes bright with emotion. "We showed them what humans are capable of, and the galaxy will never forget."